She took her cousin's place and picked up the wrong millionaire. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. It all began on a cloudy afternoon at Seattle International Airport. Emma Brooks, a 26-year-old teaching assistant, adjusted her glasses nervously as she held a sign that read Mr. Adrian Hale. She was not supposed to be there. The favor had started with a simple phone call from her cousin Sophie that morning. Sophie was supposed to welcome an important client for her travel company but had suddenly been sent on a last-minute business trip. "Emma, you would be saving my life if you could just go and pick him up," Sophie had pleaded. Emma, being the kind of person who always helped family, agreed without asking too many questions. She thought it would be a short errand, a quick airport pickup, maybe a polite conversation, and then she could get back to grading her students' papers. The arrival gate was crowded. Businessmen in suits, families with strollers, and tourists with oversized luggage streamed out. Emma clutched the sign tighter. A tall man in a gray suit walked toward her, his expression calm yet confident. His eyes were sharp, the kind that noticed everything. "Mr. Hale?" she asked with a polite smile. He nodded once. "That is me. You must be from the company." "Company?" Emma blinked but quickly smiled again. "Yes, that is right. Welcome to Seattle, Mr. Hale." He took his luggage, thanked her, and followed her to the car. The ride began in silence except for the soft hum of the engine. Emma kept glancing at the man beside her. There was something intimidating about him. His voice was low, controlled, and every move he made seemed deliberate. "So, how long are you staying in town?" she finally asked, trying to make conversation. "Depends on how the meetings go," he replied, turning his gaze from the window. "It has been a while since I visited. Seattle feels quieter than I remember." Emma nodded awkwardly. Meetings? Maybe Sophie's company was arranging some investment deal. Still, something felt off. She remembered Sophie mentioning Mr. Hale, the travel consultant, not a man who spoke like he ran empires. As the car exited the highway, rain began to fall, tapping softly on the windshield. The man looked over at her. "You seem new to this kind of work," he said with a faint smile. Emma laughed nervously. "You could say that. I am just helping out a family member today." His smile widened slightly, and for a brief second, Emma thought she saw amusement flicker in his eyes as if he already knew she was not who she claimed to be. But he said nothing. They arrived at the downtown hotel. Emma parked and helped him with his luggage. "Thank you, Mrs. Brooks," she said quickly. "Emma Brooks." "Emma," he repeated, as if testing how her name sounded. "I appreciate the ride." She nodded, her cheeks warming for no reason she could explain. As he walked into the hotel lobby, Emma felt a strange mix of relief and curiosity. Something about him stayed with her, the calm authority in his tone, the quiet intelligence behind his eyes. She shook her head, laughing at herself. "Get a grip, Emma. You just met the man." Little did she know, the name on that sign, Mr. Adrian Hale, belonged to someone entirely different. The man she had just dropped off was Alex Hale, the CEO of one of the biggest tech firms in New York. And this simple favor had just turned into the most unexpected twist of her life. The next morning, Seattle was wrapped in a soft drizzle that painted the streets silver. Emma Brooks stood by her small kitchen window, staring at the raindrops sliding down the glass. Her mind was still spinning from the strange encounter at the airport the day before. She had replayed every moment in her head, his calm voice, that faint smile, the way he had said her name as if it meant something. She poured herself a cup of coffee and tried to shake it off. It was just a favor, she muttered to herself. A one-time thing. End of story. But stories, as life often proved, had their own way of continuing. Later that afternoon, Sophie called from Los Angeles, her voice crackling with airport noise. "Emma, thank you so much for helping me out. How did the pickup go?" "It was fine," Emma replied, trying to sound casual. "Your client, Mr. Hale, arrived safely at the hotel." "Mr. Hale?" Sophie sounded puzzled. "You mean Adrian Hale, right? The one from our tourism network?" "Yes," Emma said slowly. "Why?" There was a pause, then Sophie's voice dropped. "Emma, Adrian Hale messaged me an hour ago. His flight got delayed. He will not arrive until tomorrow morning." Emma froze. Her heart skipped a beat. "Wait then, who did I pick up yesterday?" "That is what I am trying to figure out," Sophie said. "Whoever he was, please tell me you did not say anything embarrassing." Emma could only stare at her phone, her pulse racing. She thought of the man's measured words, the confident way he carried himself, the subtle amusement in his eyes. Whoever he was, he had let her call him Mr. Hale without correcting her. When the call ended, Emma sank onto the couch. "Oh no," she whispered. "What have I done?" The next day, her question was answered in the most unexpected way. At around noon, an unfamiliar number appeared on her phone. When she answered, a smooth, deep voice filled her ear. "Miss Brooks, this is Alex Hale. We met yesterday." Emma nearly dropped the phone. "Oh, yes, of course. Hello, Mr. Hale. I believe there has been some confusion," Alex continued. "I am not the client your cousin mentioned, but I would still like to thank you for the ride. Would you join me for coffee this afternoon? Consider it my way of returning the favor." Her first instinct was to say no, to hide from the embarrassment. But curiosity, and something else she could not name, made her agree. A few hours later, she found herself standing outside a small cafe near Pike Place Market. Inside, Alex sat by the window, dressed casually in a navy sweater, reading something on his tablet. When he looked up and saw her, the corner of his mouth curved slightly. "I was not sure you would come," he said. "I almost did not," she admitted, sitting down. "I owe you an apology. I honestly thought—" He raised a hand gently. "No need. I realized what happened halfway to the hotel. It was more amusing than anything else." Emma blinked. "You knew?" "I did," he said calmly. "But I was curious. You seemed real. Most people I meet in business do not look at me the way you did. You actually listened." She felt her face warm. "That is because I had no idea you were a CEO." He chuckled quietly. "Exactly." The conversation flowed more easily after that. They talked about travel, favorite coffee blends, and the chaos of modern city life. Emma found herself laughing more than she had in months. Alex had a dry, subtle sense of humor, and despite his success, there was an ease in the way he spoke to her. When they finally stepped out, the rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and clean. They walked a few blocks together before parting ways. As she watched him disappear around the corner, Emma realized something unsettling. This man, who she had met entirely by mistake, had left a mark she could not explain. She looked down at her reflection in a shop window and whispered, "What if the wrong millionaire was the right one all along?" Across town, in his hotel suite, Alex Hale stood by the window overlooking the city lights. He turned the small notebook Emma had forgotten in his car over in his hands. On the first page, written in neat handwriting, were her notes for a children's lesson. He smiled to himself. "Miss Emma Brooks," he murmured, "you are not quite what I expected." And just like that, the mistake that started with a simple airport sign began to turn into something neither of them could walk away from. Days passed, but the quiet rhythm of Emma Brooks's life no longer felt the same. Each morning, as she stood in front of her class explaining grammar rules to restless middle school students, her mind wandered to that coffee shop conversation. She replayed Alex Hale's calm tone, his attentive eyes, the way he had listened as if every word she said mattered. They had only met twice, yet it felt like something invisible had shifted inside her. She told herself not to read too much into it. After all, he was a man whose life revolved around boardrooms and billion-dollar contracts, while hers centered on lesson plans and school supplies. Still, when her phone vibrated with a short message that Friday, "Are you free for lunch tomorrow?" she could not help smiling. They met at a small bistro near the waterfront. The late morning sun streamed through the windows, glinting off the silver cutlery. Alex looked different this time, relaxed, almost playful. "I hope I am not keeping you from your students," he said as she sat down. "Actually, no classes on weekends," she replied, trying to sound composed. "I am completely at your mercy today." He smiled. "Then I will try not to make you regret it." The lunch unfolded with the same easy rhythm as before. They talked about her dream of creating a community reading program for underprivileged kids, and he asked thoughtful questions that surprised her. "You really care about this," he said. "I do," she answered. "Books gave me everything: hope, imagination, escape. I just want other children to have that too." There was something genuine in the way he looked at her, then no trace of the polished CEO image, just quiet admiration. When they left the restaurant, a light breeze rippled through the air. Alex glanced at her with a spark of mischief. "I have a meeting in an hour, but would you like a quick walk before that?" They strolled along the pier, watching ferries glide across the bay. For a few moments it felt like the world had slowed down just for them. Emma laughed as a gust of wind nearly knocked her hair loose. Alex reached out instinctively, tucking a strand behind her ear. The simple gesture sent a flutter through her chest. Before they parted, he handed her a small envelope. "It is not what you think," he said quickly, "just something that might help your reading project." Inside was a check far larger than she could have imagined. "Alex, I cannot accept this," she protested. "You can," he said softly. "Consider it an investment in something that actually matters." Emma hesitated, then smiled faintly. "You are impossible." "So, I have been told," he replied. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed more often. Sometimes it was a spontaneous coffee break between his meetings. Other times it was her sharing stories from school that made him laugh out loud. It was effortless, natural until reality began to intrude. Sophie returned from her trip, brimming with curiosity. "So," she teased, "what happened with that client you picked up?" Emma tried to dodge the question, but eventually confessed the truth. Sophie stared in disbelief. "Wait, you mean Alex Hale? The Alex Hale? He is one of the top tech CEOs in the country." Emma felt her stomach twist. "I know who he is now, but that is not why I have been spending time with him." Sophie's tone softened. "I am not judging, Emma. I just want you to be careful. People like him, they live in a different world." Those words echoed in Emma's mind long after Sophie left. 2 days later, she received a call from one of Alex's assistants, inviting her to a formal charity gala his company was hosting. Her first instinct was to decline. She did not belong in that world of gowns, champagne, and glittering chandeliers. But when she heard Alex's voice on the line saying, "It would mean a lot if you came," her heart overruled her hesitation. That evening, as she walked into the grand ballroom dressed in a simple navy gown, heads turned not because she sparkled, but because she looked effortlessly real. Alex approached her through the crowd, offering his hand with that familiar calm confidence. "I am glad you came," he said. She smiled nervously. "I almost did not." "Then I am lucky you changed your mind." For the first time, under the shimmer of city lights, the distance between their two worlds seemed to fade. Yet neither of them knew that this fragile connection was about to be tested in ways neither had expected. Because outside the ballroom, cameras flashed and a journalist whispered to another, "That is Alex Hale. And the woman with him, she is not from his world." The flashes from the cameras felt like lightning striking in the middle of a calm night. Emma Brooks tried to stay composed as she stepped inside the grand ballroom beside Alex Hale. The murmur of voices followed them, a mix of curiosity and surprise. She could feel eyes on her, scanning, assessing, whispering. Alex guided her toward a quieter corner, his hand resting gently at her back. "Do not worry about them," he said in his calm tone. "They always look for something new to talk about." "I guess I just became the headline," Emma replied, half joking, though her voice trembled slightly. He smiled reassuringly. "Let them talk. You belong here as much as anyone else." The orchestra began to play, soft music filling the air. Waiters glided past with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Emma tried to focus on the details, the elegant crystal chandeliers, the scent of fresh lilies, but she could not shake the feeling of being out of place. She had never been surrounded by so many powerful people in one room. As Alex moved away to greet a group of investors, a woman in a red gown approached Emma. Her smile was polite but sharp. "You must be the teacher Alex mentioned earlier," she said. Quite the contrast from his usual company. Emma straightened her posture. "Yes, I teach English literature. It may not sound glamorous, but it has its rewards." The woman's smile did not reach her eyes. "How charming. Enjoy the evening." She drifted away, leaving a trace of expensive perfume and unspoken judgment behind. Emma sighed quietly. She knew Sophie had been right, this was a world she did not understand. Yet when Alex returned, the tension melted away. He looked at her as if she was the only person in the room. "Would you dance with me?" he asked. She hesitated for a second, then nodded. As they stepped onto the dance floor, the room seemed to fade. His hand was firm but gentle, guiding her effortlessly through the music. "I hope tonight has not been too overwhelming," he said softly. "It has been a little intense," she admitted, smiling faintly. "But the dancing helps." "Good," he said, "because I was afraid I might scare you off." "Not yet," she replied, laughter breaking through her nerves. For a moment it felt perfect. Then, as the song ended, Alex's phone vibrated in his pocket. He frowned slightly, excused himself, and stepped away to answer. Emma watched his expression shift, first calm, then tense. When he returned, something in his demeanor had changed. "Everything all right?" she asked. He nodded, but his voice was clipped. "Just business. I will explain later." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Alex was polite but distant, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. By the time he escorted her to the car, the warmth between them had cooled into silence. At her apartment door, Emma turned to him. Did I do something wrong? He met her eyes. No, you did everything right. I just have a lot to handle right now. Of course, she said quietly. Good night, Alex. He hesitated, then gave a small nod. Good night, Emma. When the door closed behind her, she leaned against it, exhaling slowly. Something had shifted again, but this time she could not tell in which direction. Across the city, Alex stood in his hotel suite staring at his phone. The message from his assistant replayed in his mind. Asterisk. Sir, the tabloids are already running photos from tonight. They are speculating about the mystery woman with you. Asterisk. He had built his career on precision, control, and reputation. Now, one unexpected photograph threatened to unravel that calm exterior. He knew he should issue a statement, deny speculation, and move on. But when he thought of Emma, her sincerity, her laughter, the way she looked at him without judgment, he could not bring himself to distance her from the situation. The next morning, the headlines confirmed his fears. Asterisk. Alex Hale's secret date, who is the mystery woman. Asterisk, accompanied by pictures of him and Emma on the dance floor. Emma saw it before she even left for school. Her phone buzzed with messages from colleagues and friends. Is this really you? One text read. She set the phone down, her heart pounding. She had known it might happen. But the reality still hurt. That afternoon, she received another message from Alex. Asterisk. Can we meet tonight? I owe you an explanation. Asterisk. She stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Yes. As the sun dipped below the skyline, painting Seattle in hues of gold and gray, Emma knew that this meeting would either draw them closer or tear them apart. The evening air carried a chill as Emma Brooks walked toward the cafe near the waterfront, her thoughts heavy and uncertain. The headlines from that morning still echoed in her mind, each word cutting deeper than she expected. She had never sought attention, and now her picture was everywhere paired with a man whose world she barely understood. Alex Hale was already there when she arrived, seated at a corner table with a view of the harbor. He stood as she entered, his expression calm but shadowed by something unreadable. Emma, he said quietly, pulling out a chair for her. She sat down, folding her hands in her lap to keep them from trembling. You said you wanted to explain. He nodded. I do. First, I want to say I am sorry. I should have protected your privacy. The moment those photos appeared, I realized what this must feel like for you. Emma looked down. It feels strange. Yesterday, I was just a teacher. Today, people are treating me like I have done something wrong just for knowing you. Alex's jaw tightened. That is the cost of publicity, and I hate that it reached you. But I do not regret meeting you. She met his eyes, searching for honesty in his tone. Then why did you seem so distant after the gala? He hesitated, then exhaled. Because the timing could not be worse. My board is finalizing a merger deal with investors who care about image more than people. They want predictability, not surprises. A story like this could give them doubts. So I am a risk, Emma said softly. No, he said firmly, you are not the risk. The people judging you are. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the quiet hum of conversation around the cafe. Then she spoke again. Alex, I do not belong in your world. I have seen how people look at me when I stand beside you. It is not just curiosity, it is disapproval. He leaned forward slightly. I do not care what they think. But I do, she said, her voice trembling. Because it affects you, and it affects me. I cannot teach my students to be brave if I am hiding from gossip. He looked at her, conflicted. Are you saying we should stop seeing each other? She took a deep breath. I am saying I need time to think, to breathe. Maybe we both do. Alex did not argue. He simply nodded, his expression unreadable. If that is what you need, I will respect it. When she left the cafe, the streets were quiet except for the distant sound of waves. She walked slowly, feeling the ache of something precious slipping away. Days turned into weeks. Emma focused on her students and her reading program, burying herself in work. The attention faded gradually, replaced by new headlines and new faces. But late at night, when she graded papers at her kitchen table, her thoughts drifted back to Alex, the sound of his voice, the way he had looked at her during that dance, the sincerity in his apology. Meanwhile, in New York, Alex was caught in a storm of decisions. The merger went through, but every success felt hollow. In meetings, he found himself staring at the city skyline, hearing her words replay in his head. Asterisk. I cannot teach my students to be brave if I am hiding from gossip. Asterisk. One afternoon, his assistant placed an envelope on his desk. This arrived from Seattle, she said. Inside was a handwritten note on plain stationery. Asterisk. The community library is open. The children are reading. Thank you for believing in something that matters. Asterisk. At the bottom was Emma's signature. Alex smiled faintly, holding the note as if it were something fragile. That same evening, he booked a flight to Seattle. 2 days later, Emma was at the new community library, arranging books on the shelves when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You built this," Alex said softly. She turned, startled. "What are you doing here?" He stepped closer, his expression calm but resolute. "You were right. Image, reputation, all of it means nothing if I cannot be honest about what I care about. And I care about you, Emma." For a moment, she could only stare at him, speechless. Then she smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. "You came all this way to tell me that?" He smiled too. "Yes. And this time I am not leaving without an answer." The library was quiet except for the sound of pages rustling nearby, like soft applause for a love that had survived distance, doubt, and the weight of two very different worlds. The soft hum of children reading filled the community library as the afternoon sunlight streamed through the tall windows. Emma Brooks arranged a few books on the table, still replaying Alex Hale's words from the day before. He had stood in that very spot, his voice steady and sincere, telling her that he cared about her more than reputation or headlines. Even now, her heart raced at the memory. She had not expected him to come back. After everything, the gossip, the judgment, the distance, she thought their story had ended. But Alex had returned, standing before her not as a billionaire CEO, but simply as a man who meant every word he said. That evening, Emma closed the library early. As she locked the door, she saw Alex waiting outside with 2 cups of coffee. "You closed up faster than I expected," he said with a smile. "I needed an excuse to step outside," she replied, smiling back. "It feels different today." He handed her one of the cups. "I figured you would still like it the same way. 2 sugars, no cream." She laughed softly. "You remembered." "I remember everything about that day," he said. "The airport, the rain, even how nervous you looked when you held that sign." Her cheeks warmed at the thought. "You knew I was nervous?" "I did," he said gently. "But I liked that about you. You were real." They walked along the quiet street, their steps matching in rhythm. For a while, neither spoke. Then Emma broke the silence. "Alex, when you came here yesterday, were you sure? I mean, this is not just a simple visit. The press, your investors—" "I have thought about that," he interrupted calmly. "The merger is done. The company is stable. For once, I do not have to calculate every move. I just want to choose what feels right." She looked up at him. "And you think this feels right?" He met her gaze steadily. "I do." They reached the small park near the water, the same one where they had walked weeks before. The air smelled faintly of salt and pine. Alex sat on the bench, motioning for her to sit beside him. "When I was younger," he said, "I thought success would make everything clear. But the truth is, it only made the noise louder. You were the first quiet moment I have had in years." Emma's eyes softened. "That is probably the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me." He smiled faintly. "It is also the truest." For a moment they sat in silence, watching the sunset reflect off the water. Then Alex turned to her. "I know we come from different worlds, but I am willing to learn yours if you are willing to let me in." Emma hesitated. "Alex, I cannot promise it will be easy. People will still talk." "Let them," he said simply, "as long as they are talking about how happy we are." She laughed, unable to help it. "You really are impossible." "Maybe," he said, "but I am impossible in love with you." The words hung in the air, clear and unhurried. She felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness, but from the quiet certainty of knowing that this was no longer a misunderstanding, no longer a passing moment of attraction born from chance. It was something real. Later that night, as she stood by her window watching the city lights flicker, Emma thought about how everything had begun with a sign, a mistake, and a ride from the airport. What were the odds that such a simple act could change 2 lives so completely? Across town, Alex watched the same skyline from his hotel balcony. He held his phone, reading Emma's message. Asterisk. "Thank you for coming back." Asterisk. He typed his reply slowly, smiling to himself. Asterisk. "I never really left." Asterisk. In that moment, both of them understood that what had started as a mix-up had become something extraordinary, a connection neither wealth nor circumstance could define. And for the first time, the wrong millionaire finally felt like the right man in the right story. The following weeks unfolded like a calm chapter after a long storm. The headlines had faded, the gossip had moved on, and Emma Brooks's world returned to a quieter rhythm, except that now, Alex Hale was part of it. He began spending more time in Seattle, often visiting the community library. The children loved him almost instantly. They would gather around when he read aloud, laughing at his dry humor and asking endless questions about his company and his life in New York. Emma watched those moments with quiet pride. The man once known for his sharp decisions and relentless pace now sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by giggling children. One afternoon, after the last child had left, Alex stayed behind to help stack books. "You have built something beautiful here," he said. "You changed this place." Emma smiled. "Maybe a little. But you helped too. Without your donation, we would still be trying to buy books." "I only gave money," he said. "You gave this place its soul." For a moment they stood close, the sunlight painting soft gold on the shelves. He brushed a stray curl from her face, and her breath caught. "Emma," he said quietly, "I do not want this to be temporary." Her heart raced. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I want to stay. Not just for business trips, not just for visits. I want to build something real with you." Emma hesitated, torn between disbelief and joy. "Alex, your life is in New York. Your company, your world." He shook his head. "My company can survive without me for a while. I spent years building an empire that never felt like home. Maybe home is not a place. Maybe it is a person." She looked at him, her eyes glistening. "You cannot just leave everything behind for me." "I am not leaving everything," he said. "I am choosing differently. There is a difference." Before she could respond, her phone rang. It was Sophie. Emma stepped aside to answer, still dazed. "Hey, Soph." Her cousin's voice was urgent. "Emma, did you see the news? Alex's company is in the middle of a new deal. Reporters are saying he might be moving his headquarters here, to Seattle." Emma froze. "What?" Sophie continued. "If that is true, people will think you had something to do with it." After the call, Emma looked at Alex. He had already seen the same report on his phone. "They think I influenced you," she said softly. He put the phone down. "They can think what they want. I made my decision long before they started talking." Still, doubt flickered in her eyes. "This could make things harder for you." He took her hand. "It might, but everything worth keeping is hard sometimes." She exhaled slowly, the tension easing from her shoulders. "You really are serious about this, aren't you?" "I am," he said. "I have been serious since the day I got into your car by mistake." She laughed through the tears. "Then maybe that mistake was the best thing that ever happened to either of us." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint sound of children's laughter from the playground nearby. For once, the world around them felt exactly right. The next morning, the calm they had found began to tremble under the weight of public attention once again. News outlets across the country were buzzing with speculation. Billionaire CEO relocates company for love. The headlines read. Photos of Alex Hale and Emma Brooks outside the community library appeared on countless screens. Emma sat at her kitchen table, staring at the television in disbelief. Her phone buzzed constantly, messages from coworkers, reporters, even strangers. The words that once felt romantic now carried a different tone when repeated by the media. When Alex arrived later that morning, he found her pacing near the window. "I saw it," he said quietly. Emma turned to him, her expression strained. "They are saying you moved your company here because of me, that you made a billion-dollar decision based on a mistake from an airport." He stepped closer. "Emma, none of this matters. People will always create stories they can sell. What matters is what we know to be true." She shook her head. "It matters when your investors question your judgment. It matters when my students' parents start asking if I am part of some publicity stunt. Alex, this is not just noise anymore. It is affecting everything." For the first time, she saw uncertainty in his eyes. "I can handle the investors," he said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "I have handled worse." "But can I handle it?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. "I love what we have, but I do not know if I am strong enough to live in your spotlight." He looked at her for a long moment, the air thick between them. "Are you asking me to choose between you and my life's work?" "No," she said quietly. "I am asking you to understand that I need to breathe outside of your world, just for a while." The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Alex nodded slowly. "If space is what you need, I will give it to you. But I will not stop believing in us." He left without another word. Days turned into a blur. Emma threw herself into teaching, avoiding the news entirely. The library continued to thrive, though each corner reminded her of him. Some nights, she caught herself looking at her phone, half expecting a message that never came. Across the city, Alex faced the storm head-on. In meetings, his advisors pressed him for answers, suggesting press statements and damage control. But Alex refused to distance himself from Emma. "If the truth costs me business," he told them, "then maybe I have been valuing the wrong things." One evening, he opened his laptop and saw an email from a parent in Seattle. It was short, but it made him stop and read twice. Asterisk. "Thank you for supporting Miss Brooks's library. My daughter comes home talking about books instead of phones. You made a difference." Asterisk. That message reminded him why he had made his decision in the first place. Meanwhile, at the library, Emma looked out the window as dusk fell. The children had gone home, the lights were dim, and the quiet wrapped around her like an old friend. She reached for one of the donated books and smiled faintly. On the inside cover was a dedication written in Alex's handwriting. Asterisk for Emma. "The right mistake changed my life." Asterisk. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Maybe I am ready to stop running." Outside, the city lights flickered like distant stars, hinting that their story was not over yet. The first days of spring arrived quietly in Seattle. The rain softened, the skies cleared, and the city carried a lightness that matched the change inside Emma Brooks's heart. Weeks had passed since she last saw Alex Hale. Yet his presence lingered in small reminders: the laughter of children in the library, the smell of coffee in the morning, the words he had once said about choosing differently. She had spent the past month rebuilding her balance, learning how to exist again outside of headlines and speculation. The noise had faded. The reporters had moved on to other stories, and her students once again saw her not as the woman in a photograph, but as their teacher. Still, there were moments when she wondered if Alex would ever return, or if their story had quietly found its ending. One afternoon, as she finished shelving the last of the new donations, she heard the door open behind her. "We are closed for the day," she called without turning around. "I was hoping you would make an exception," a familiar voice replied. She froze. Slowly, she turned to see Alex standing near the entrance, dressed simply, holding a small stack of books. His smile was gentle but uncertain, as if he was waiting for permission to step closer. "You came back," she said softly. "I never stopped meaning to," he answered. "I just wanted to make sure I was coming back for the right reason." Emma blinked, trying to steady the wave of emotions rising in her chest. "And what reason is that?" He placed the books on the counter. "Because I finally learned that love does not need to exist in two separate worlds. It only needs two people willing to meet halfway." For a long moment, they stood facing each other, the weight of everything unspoken between them. Then she stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Halfway sounds perfect." He smiled, relief softening every line of his face. "I thought you might say that." They sat together at one of the reading tables as the evening light poured through the windows. Alex told her that his company had settled into its new Seattle branch and that he had delegated more of his responsibilities. "For once," he said, "I can choose where I want to be, not just where I am needed." Emma listened, her heart calm in a way it had not been for months. "You sound happier," she said. "I am," he replied, "because this time I am building something that lasts." Outside, the streetlights flickered on, one by one. The children's drawings still hung on the walls. The smell of paper and ink filled the air, and the sound of rain began to patter softly against the windows again, just like the day they met. Alex reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. "Do you remember the first thing you said to me?" he asked. She laughed. "I said, 'Welcome to Seattle, Mr. Hale.' And I never really left," he said. For a moment, neither spoke. The world outside continued its quiet rhythm, but inside the library, time seemed to pause. The mistake that had once brought them together had become the foundation of something steady, something true. Emma smiled and whispered, "Then, maybe the wrong millionaire was exactly the right one after all." And with that, their story born from a misunderstanding at an airport found its perfect ending, wrapped not in grand gestures, but in the gentle certainty of two hearts that had finally found their place.